So, Michael, we've been having a lot of discussion internally amongst many of us in the company about this issue of Microsoft certification. You know, what is it, why is it, and everything else. This has become, I think, a little bit more urgent given the things that are going on the Microsoft side, and it certainly plays into our day-to-day life. Let's dig into that just for a brief conversation here. Tell me first, just start off and just sort of set a baseline understanding. What goes into Microsoft certification? What is it?
So the certification is really important because it's a badge, but it's not just a badge. There's a ton of work that goes into it. The certification involves a thorough testing of your solution that you've developed. So it's, Microsoft gives you the tools to go and build it. These tools are actually publicly available, but then there are certain little sneaky things that you'll find here and then that bubble up to the surface while you're building it. And then being part of the certification enables you to collaborate directly with the engineering team to be able to develop on these APIs and deliver the best solution. And only really once you have that tight interaction with them do you get to learn the important little nuances that are involved. There are certain nuances like large meetings and certain stress on the system and on bots based on those larger meetings and larger interactions. So it's very important, not only do you get the badge, but you have to go through thorough testing with a third-party company that runs through a 250 call test case scenario. You have to go through a certain security and compliance audit with a third-party firm to show that you're up to scratch when it comes to compliance, like an ISO. I wouldn't go so far as a SOC 2. That is more of an optional but very recommended extra. So there's a lot that goes into it to be able to say that you're certified and deliver on that certification.
It goes far beyond the badge. This is not something that one procures, not something one buys. This is a deep audit that really sort of fleshes out, are you capable of delivering on everything that the Graph API can show?
Yes, and in addition to that, it also unlocks certain things for the customer, or let's say doesn't block is maybe the important thing. I'm always a positive person. I don't like to hang on to negatives, but I think in this case, doesn't block is important. Scenarios such as if you're not using a certified recorder and you are having an issue with your team's calling or any instance like that, will you still get the support from Microsoft that you're promised if you're using a certified vendor? So for example, they might say to you, sorry, there's not a certified app running. That could be the cause of your issues. But because we don't have a relationship with that company, there's no troubleshooting, turn off that app, and there you go. So it's very, very important. We collaborate very closely with Microsoft when they find issues in their calling, when we maybe see an issue in recording. We have to collaborate because we're so intrinsically involved in the actual call. We're a participant in the call, and there are certain things that can affect the actual quality of the call as well.
So a lot of this comes down to Microsoft in this case placing a lot of trust in the provider, placing all of this trust that they've conducted the audit, that the provider has passed, you get the certification, you get the positive halo effect that goes around that. How does this, I mean, it feels like it's very much part and parcel to, as you mentioned, the SOC 2 process, ISO process, all around this issue of trust and the way a regulated company, for example, would look at compliance call recording and say, I have 100 choices out there in the world. How that comes together for them is a statement of how they view, the importance of trust.
Well, our goal is to build as much trust with our customers as possible. Number one, if we're going to a compliance customer and telling them that we have a solution that will assist them in their regulatory requirements with audits, things like that. Number one, most importantly, is as a company, we want to make sure that we can stand by security. So we get an ISO, which is pretty much should be standard these days, 27001 security ISO audit, and you're good to go. Number two, if you're representing Microsoft with Teams, you want to make sure you're certified, because that in itself that M365 security is like having an ISO. So you have a second ISO, and then you have Microsoft going through the whole test plan with you to make sure that you can work in every possible scenario that there might be a Teams call. That's 3. Then you also have additional things like making sure that if there is a support scenario involved, you can have support direct with Microsoft to troubleshoot any issues. And on the other side, if there's an issue in the Microsoft environment, you have that. Then further on to the trust is, do we want to get a SOC 2 Type 2, which now is even more important? Because when we go into opportunities with our partners on these Teams recording, compliance recording, there are these questionnaires. In any meaningful interaction, there's a questionnaire, and they start from the top and they go through pages and pages of things that you should comply with. Now, we like to comply with that, but we go the extra yard on that one. But again, top of the rank to me is, are you certified? And I might, I'm giving many of our certified competitors a leg up here as well. And I think that it's an absolute imperative thing to be using a certified platform if you're really serious about compliance, and also if you're serious about your communication through Teams.
So this issue of and SOC 2 and SOC 2 Type 2 is an interesting one, because we've seen cases where partners, customers, and others have said, if you're not SOC 2 Type 2, then we can't move forward.
So SOC 2 does not apply to the company, it applies to the product. So it also, again, sometimes there's a gray area where people think that the product is, but it's just because there's a badge on the site, they think that somehow it's a company certification. It's not. And the product goes through rigorous testing and checks and balances to get that SOC 2. There's an audit every year, a physical audit that has to happen on the platform to make sure that you are living up to that standard and that you're doing what you say you're doing. Not only presenting it in documents to say, hey, I'm complying with this, but actually people verify that you're doing what you say.
Yeah, it seems that from our own quick research on the subject, there's a number of people in this industry in compliance call recording that are Microsoft certified. Many are not, of course, the subject of this conversation. When it comes to ISO, a good number are ISO 27001. When you dig into SOC 2 Type 2, however, as it is product specific, what we've discovered is there's an extraordinarily small set of companies in our space whose call recording product is SOC 2 Type 2. As you said, it's product specific. It could be sitting over here in a different product. It has nothing to do with what you're buying. That doesn't mean the company is SOC 2 Type 2.
Correct. And SOC 2 is so specific and so granular that it's important to understand exactly what you're buying. And I always tell everyone that I'm not here to speak negative about anything or anyone. I'm the positive guy, as everyone who knows me. But I always believe that you should really do your homework, dig in deep, and make sure that you've crossed your T's and dotted your I's anywhere if you're serious about what you're doing. And these days, you can be a non-regulated customer just wanting to record calls, but how important is it that your Teams calling works? So you might be only using it for quality, to make sure that your people are saying the right things. But what happens if there's an issue in your calling and you can get the support you need because the recorder that was just a means to an end doesn't work? And again, that you'll only discover when you discover that, and that might be too late.
So that kind of leads us into that dangerous deep end of the pool here in this conversation. What does it mean to be Microsoft certified? Right, all of these things have to take place, and how does that evolve into a greater culture of trust? What happens when you find yourself in those difficult situations, whether it's technology, whether it's audit, whether it's something else, just platform failure at a certain point, and you're not Microsoft certified? You're dealing as a customer from an end user perspective. I've chosen this vendor for whatever reasons. They're not Microsoft certified. What's going to happen
So you're going to find yourself in a little bit of a pickle because you're going to be struggling and scrambling to get some help where everyone is basically going to be telling you, "Oops, I don't know if I can help." So you're gonna land up in a little bit of trouble.
Let's get very specific just for a moment on this, because this is important, not just throwing out vague fear and uncertainty. Teams recording changes all the time, right? The platform changes, features are rolled out, things change. So this isn't an insurance policy. This is something very specific that is going to happen on an irregular, unpredictable schedule. And I want you to speak to this because you're the expert, but I mean, this whole issue of break fix, when you're a compliance oriented, regulated customer, to me is kind of a head scratcher, because if you have to have the recording, if you cannot accept, we lost a week, we lost a month because we just stopped recording and we just figured it out, this becomes really important. If you are certified, you know these changes are coming.
So we have access, being anyone who's part of the certification program or certified has access to a channel where we understand what is coming out, when it is coming out, hopefully. Sometimes these are delayed. But you also get the tools required to be able to be ready when those changes are happening. So for example, call queue recording, targeting of call queues, which on inbound queues, you have to target the queue. Otherwise, there will be a breaking change that when that is turned off, when transfer mode is off, and you have to go into recording a call queue on an inbound queue, targeting the user anymore won't help. So if you're expecting 200-300 queues, people calling in, and all of a sudden, because you think your agent is targeted, their calls are going to be recorded on the inbound, you're going to be mistaken. And it's not a 25-minute fix to get it enabled. It takes time. We've had customers in preview even testing it out and helping Microsoft. So depends. I've heard of customers now with 2,000-3,000 call queues in Teams. Do you really want to be in that position where your 3,000 queues, inbound calls, are all not recording, and then you have to figure out how quick you can get it working again? And again, you could always switch your vendor, but how quick can that happen? We actually had an incident a week ago where that happened. We were fortunate enough to be able to switch them within an afternoon, but it became a critical element of them. Unfortunately, we were able to resolve it, but it's not always that easy to jump to it, and there might be other security things involved that require longer than just an afternoon to get a product enabled. So yeah, it's a very, very, it's a risky slope you're walking there. If you're going, if you're a compliance vendor, if you're compliance oriented and regulatory audits are important, I would seriously consider the fact, I would seriously make you think twice before not using a certified platform.
Unlike the possibility of an audit, the platform's going to change. Therefore, it is going to break. If you haven't had any foresight ahead of time, it will break. It's not like, well, we're going to hold out hope that we don't get audited. This is a known, if you'll pardon the expression. It is going to break, and either it's going to change ahead of time or you don't. This is a topic that we should spend more time on, and we probably don't have time to do it right now. But Microsoft certification is a bigger deal than I think a lot of people are acknowledging.
Yeah, Microsoft make it stringent because they're putting their trust in us so that we can deliver trust to you. So that's where the importance lies.